Join the mixer. It's all good. All right, here we are. Thank you guys for coming to PublicHouse. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is really scary. Welcome back from Memorial Weekend. I'm really glad you guys were able to make it. It's a really awesome crowd. We're going to talk about Google I/O, Facebook F8, and if you guys don't know anything about what those things are, that's totally cool. We're going to talk about it really fast. So, quick announcement: YouTube, Pinterest, LinkedIn, Twitch, all awesome platforms you guys might know a little bit about or might not know nothing about, and that's okay. These are the platforms we're going to be covering in the second round of What the F is. So John and Lee on the off weeks of PublicHouse. So a week from this Tuesday, we're going to be covering starting with YouTube. And then we're going to cruise through all four of these platforms throughout the summer. So look forward to that. It's been a really successful first 8 weeks we were running this whole thing. And we're going to be covering that with What the F is. So it's a baseline look at some of these platforms and how we as advertisers can get involved with them and the opportunities that they create for our brands. We also recently published this Revolutions of Retail report, and we have some books up here that really look at the PublicHouse. We take the PublicHouse presentation we did, put it in this awesome book format, and I can take almost no credit for this. Joe, Stephanie, Garrick, and Chris went to town on this and made it really, really awesome. So if you guys want a copy of this, we have copies up here. We'd love to get them on your desk, use them for clients, whatever you might like. So come grab one of those when we're done. As always, edge.periscope.com. Everything we talk about here today will be published on that right at 9:30. So you'll get an email at 9:30. Basically, you can jump on, download the presentation as a PDF, a keynote, steal slides, steal the videos, whatever you might like. That's that. So that's some announcements. All right, we're going to talk quickly in the next 20-25 minutes about Facebook and Google, the conferences they recently had, and why that matters to the work that we're doing today. What are we going to do with that information when we sit back down at our desks, and how is this going to affect the work we're doing for our clients? So we're going to talk about the conferences. We're going to talk about platform domination, like why is Facebook and Google, why are they so important right now? We're going to look at I/O, we're going to look at F8, and we're going to also look at why this all matters. So Facebook, Google, we've heard of them. Obviously, we use them all the time. 77% of people touch the Google search engine each day, which I think is a really low stat. Android, the Google operating system that runs on Android smartphones, actually just surpassed 2 billion active users. That's insane. If you look at the number 2 billion, the other crazy thing too is that 2 billion is the daily active user count for Facebook. And Facebook has saturated the market so much that they're looking at figuring out how to get more people internet, because they're finding that that is the limitation to truly getting Facebook, right? And so to get across that 2 billion number, they're looking at their drone programs to figure out how are we going to get internet to countries that don't have internet so that they can get on Facebook. Big numbers, right? For us, we just did this presentation at United Healthcare, and we looked at how much of our money from our digital ad spend goes to either Facebook or Google. In 2015 to 2016, we were looking at 76%, and if Chris Hyland's here, which I don't think he is, we're looking at more like 95 to 98% of every new dollar we spend in digital ad goes to either Facebook or Google. Big deal, right? It's huge. So it's something to keep in track of. So developer conferences. What the heck are developer conferences? I think the best way to describe this would be that every year these big tech companies get together and invite the people who contribute to their platform or who have a stake in it to come, and they're going to talk about what's going to come in the next 12 months. What can we look forward to as developers to truly what's going to happen, and what's the roadmap for success for the company. So why do we care? We're not necessarily developers, or we don't necessarily build applications on Facebook, or we're not really in the depths of Google. But the point of what this does is it gives us as public, or people who I would argue we're more advanced than public, we're responsible for catering these new things in, but it gives us a sneak peek of the things that are to come and the tools that are become available to us as advertisers that are new and different, and are going to be able to reach our audiences in new and different ways. So that's why we care. We take a look, we look at Mark sitting up there, and he says, this is all the great stuff that's coming on Facebook. As advertisers, we can get ahead of that, right? We can look and say, wow, that's really cool. It might not be out yet, but I can get an early adopter program, or I can see where this could be really cool for my client. Let's make sure we're the first ones there. Let's make sure this is something that we tackle as soon as it comes out. So it's kind of this roadmap for that, right? So Google's developer conference is called I/O 2017, and then Facebook is called F8. And there's stories behind that, and I won't bore you with either one of those. So here's my take on the whole thing, right? I often stand up here and talk about all these crazy platforms, like VR is going to be amazing, and AR is awesome, buzzword, 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 buzzword. But why is it so different here today? And my take on this whole thing is the features that we're going to talk about today may seem futuristic, right? They may seem buzzwordy. They may fall into that category of truly oh, that's way out there, we're not going to touch it. But the thing about Facebook and Google, when you look at the user adoption rate, is the second that these people pick this up and launch it on their platform, it instantly is mainstream, right? So if Facebook all of a sudden wants to put an AR platform on top of Messenger, AR is no longer a buzzword, a further out thing. You have millions of people using that technology almost instantly, as soon as Facebook wants to switch the button, right? So it's a little different today when we're looking at these features. We need to realize that this is stuff that's not only just coming down the road, but it's here, it's going to be here, and it's going to be here for the mainstream user, if it's not already, right? All right, I/O. So we're going to talk about a couple of main features that people announced, why that matters, and there's some really cool videos. As you can imagine, the production value of these conferences is pretty big, but I promise no videos over a minute, so you guys won't be too bored. So Google I/O, a lot of it revolved around Google Assistant. Now, Google Assistant is something that you can probably compare a little bit to Siri, you compare to Alexa, and we've done presentations on that before. But there's some interesting things about Google Assistant that are different, and things that are going to be really applicable to the work that we do every day. So a quick little recap of Google Assistant. Let's take a look.
Okay, Google.
Hey, Google.
Hey, Google.
Okay, Google.
Hey, Google.
Play some dance music.
Sure.
This is fresh air. I guess we'll be...
Kimmy Schmidt on Netflix.
Okay, Google, count to 100.
Sure. 1, 2, 3.
Play Vacuum Harmonica on my TV.
71, 72, 73. Play the Wonder Woman trailer.
Hey, Google. Talk to Dominus.
Talk to Lonely Planet.
Talk to Cora.
Show me my photos from last weekend.
Your car is parked at 22B. Today in the news.
Turn the living room lights on.
Okay, turning on the lights.
I'm back, baby.
Hey, Google, drop a beat.
Flip a coin. Call Jill.
Set a timer.
Talk to Headspace.
And then just for a moment, I'd like you to let go of any focus at all. Just let your mind do whatever it wants to do.
Done.
Hey, Google. Good night.
Turning off all the things. See you tomorrow.
So that's a fun little overview of Google Assistant, what they announced. But the three things they wanted Assistant to be, and they continue to develop towards, are conversational, right? We saw that. Always available, which is really interesting. We'll talk about that really quickly. And ultimately ready to help with whatever you might need. Right? We're seeing a lot of similarities with Alexa, and I'm going to debunk that here in a couple of seconds. But I want to talk about the brand integration that Google's really been able to champion, and they introduced and talked a little bit more about at I/O. And so they did this really awesome demo with Panera Bread, and how does a brand like Panera, or a service company, come to life on Google Assistant, and how can it completely replace some of the traditional processes we have? And here's a quick little demo.
Hi, how can I help?
I'd like delivery from Panera.
Hi, this is Panera. I'll need your delivery address. Which one can I get from Google?
We'll go with 1600 Amphitheater.
What can I get you started with?
I'll have the strawberry poppy seed salad with steak instead of chicken.
Got it. How about one of these cold drinks?
And here I can just swipe through my options, see what looks good. Agave lemonade.
Great. Are you ready to check out?
Yep.
Okay. The total is $18.40. Are you ready to place the order?
Yes. I'll just scan my fingerprint to pay with Google, and that's it.
So that's a quick transaction on Google Assistant, the new Google Assistant. You can imagine, obviously, Panera's not a client of ours, right? But you can imagine the capabilities that are now baked into this interface and how they could apply to some of the work we do each day. Everything from customization to payment to taking care of everything on a single platform is now happening via Google Assistant in a really transactional and really seamless way, as we talked about. All right, so like, what's the difference between Google Assistant and like Alexa? Wasn't I just standing up here 6 weeks ago and saying, oh, Alexa's great and it can do everything? Like, why is it now Google Assistant? Like, I thought you said Alexa was the coolest thing. I think what's really interesting about Google Assistant is that what Google has, Amazon had to introduce nearly a hardware platform in order to get Alexa in the home. And don't get me wrong, they're incredibly successful with it. But what's interesting is you look at Google and all the platforms they own, everything from Android to the new Google Home device to the search functionality. When they release something like Assistant, that technology instantly spreads across everything and everyone, right? And so it's a pretty big deal. The interesting thing too that they released is now available on the iPhone, right? So if you guys don't have it already, you can download it actually today on the App Store, and I would encourage you all to get Google Assistant. It's a standalone application. You can launch it right from your control center on the iPhone, and it can basically do anything you really want. Google Lens, this is something that's got a lot of traction in the media. We've talked a little bit about this on Edge. But what Google Lens allows you to do is it allows you to use the camera on your phone on top of Google Assistant or other Google apps and point it at something on the street, point it at a flower, point it at a table, and Google will instantly serve back relevant information based on what you're looking at, right? So the example over here is saying, all right, I'm going to point it at a storefront. It's going to instantly show me the rating, when it's open, the friends who've rated it, all that kind of stuff, all just by looking at through your camera, so no actually typing anything in. That technology, as I just mentioned, now spreads across all Google platforms, right? So it has an effect on search, it has an effect on Assistant, it has an effect on Photos. And here's a really interesting example of how Google Photos is changing based on the new technology that they're introducing through the Lens.
If there's one thing you know, it's that you're a great photographer. If there's a second thing you know, it's that you're kind of a terrible person.
What?
Yeah, you heard me. The best picture of the entire wedding? Kept it to yourself. This masterpiece of your best friend? Well, you're gonna send it, but then you were like, oh, remember that sandwich? I love that sandwich. If only something could say, hey, Eric looks great in these. Do you want to send them to him? And you could be like, great idea. Well, it can. Wait, it can? Yep, with Google Photos.
So that's an example of how they're using Google Lens, the image recognition software on top of Google Photos, to be able to actually deliver a better user experience. I'm going to be able to figure out that Lee's in a bunch of my photos, we had a killer weekend. Google's going to actually automatically pick some of the best pictures, bundle them all up so I can send them to Lee. Now I know that sounds trivial, but it's just an example of a consumer-facing feature that this back-end technology is enabling, right? And we're going to see that take place across all Google platforms. Really quickly, Daydream is a VR platform that Google announced along with their Pixel phone. So if you remember about 6, 8, 12 months ago, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but they released this thing called Daydream, and it was the ability for a VR experience to come to life on Pixel. Looked like this, right? So they sold, very similar, they sold this headset, you drop the Pixel phone in, and it's a VR experience very similar to some of the other VR experience we've seen. The thing that they announced that Daydream is now available on the Samsung Galaxy, and that's a big deal because Google is now powering VR experiences on a huge scale because they're now releasing it on a Samsung platform, which is really interesting. They're also in works of launching a standalone VR platform, so no computer, no phone needed, a headset that you can buy affordably and actually use. The coolest part about this is that on top of this, they're launching a technology called WorldSense. And if any of you have tried VR before, you'll realize that it's really easy to get sick because the VR experience is really cool, and you can look around, and you look up and down, but the second you kind of take a step left or take a step right, the technology doesn't really keep up, and all of a sudden your body's doing one thing, your mind's doing another, and a lot of people have a really adverse reaction to it. WorldSense is a technology that they're enabling on Google's VR platforms that actually enables the VR experience to monitor movement, not just with your head, but me walking left, right, back and forth. There's a really cool video that shows exactly how this works. That's a little about Daydream and the standalone headset and WorldSense that's actually going to be able to propel Google into a bit of a different platform when it comes to VR. Right? So that was I.O. A couple minutes to run through F8. So we talked about Google. Great. Let's jump onto Facebook. Facebook's something that we're all very familiar with, right? Facebook's developer conference happened a couple weeks ago, so this is maybe a little bit older news, but you guys might be a little ahead of it by reading some of the publications. But every time Google or Facebook does developer conference, they talk about this 10-year roadmap that Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, kind of started with. I think it was a couple years back. But the whole idea is that they're moving towards year 10 with the connectivity, AI, VR, AR. Don't worry about it. It's details. But the point is that they have a 10-year roadmap that they're constantly updating the public on. And I think the big thing about Facebook that they released, and I think you'll see it now in the consumer version of Facebook, is that the camera is becoming more and more powerful. The camera is powering more of the experiences. And you got to remember too, Facebook is not just Facebook. You look at Facebook, Messenger, Instagram, and a variety of other platforms that we all use every day and might not be aware that Facebook owns and has a huge effect on it. So Facebook's version of VR took the standard VR world and tried to slam it together and is attempting to slam it together with the social world that we experience on Facebook. Now, I think some of you have probably seen this video. I've shown it in a couple of presentations, but it's a little out there, so let's take a look.
Hey, sis.
Hey, Jack. Are you all excited for our trip?
Yeah, and look what I found.
This is so cool. Is this the same spot we're going to?
I hope so. And look, I think that's where we're taking the boat tour.
Oh, I love it. Look, I'm gonna go chat with Melissa, but you're setting up the party room, right?
Yeah, I got it.
Great. See you later, Jack.
All right, see you later.
Bye. Hey, girl. Guess what?
What?
I got the apartment.
Wow, nice. Look at your balcony.
I know, it's amazing. No roommates. I have it all planned out. The lucky blue couch.
Yes.
This table with this floor.
Perfect. Jack keeps calling me. Can we talk later?
Sure.
Bye.
Surprise!
Happy birthday!
Thanks, you guys.
Happy birthday.
Oh, stop, don't let it like the song.
Okay, hold this balloon. You know we gotta do it. Birthday selfie!
Oh my god.
Don't forget your birthday hat.
That's a good one. Hey! Look at my birthday hat.
So cute.
All right, seems a little weird, right? That's out right now. That launched 10 minutes after they announced it on stage. So we're actually using this right now in the Vive system. This is not some futuristic thing. This is available to us today, and people are using it, right? Example, Facebook, Google, it's a big deal. Frames and masks. Facebook rips off Snapchat all the time, right? And we're gonna talk a little bit about why this is different. But you look at frames and masks coming to not only Messenger, but Instagram, very similar to what we've seen in Snapchat. And as you can see, it looks like a very familiar user interface, and they're going to continue to invest in this, right? And continue to invest in the AR tools. So when we look at AR, augmented reality is basically the masks and things that can track to your face, or when you get the ears, or when things happen in the background relative. That's what we mean when we're talking about augmented reality, but the advanced filters, advanced masks. And now this has an effect more on just the selfie camera, right? So when we look at the camera being such a fuel for these new Facebook experiences, Mark Zuckerberg announced kind of this new idea of how gaming can actually come to life because of this new technology.
Let's talk about games. Now, more than 1 billion of us play games. And I think that there's going to be a whole new genre of augmented reality games coming. So here's an example of a father playing an augmented reality game with his kids in the waiting room at the doctor's office, where he's using the table in the waiting room as the game board for a tower defense game, and the kids can kind of slap the bad guys before they get to you. Now, there's going to be a lot of awesome stuff like this that comes, and I'm pretty excited about this. This part of the platform is going to come a bit later this year.
So this is an advanced gaming platform that's actually being developed right now and will come out in the next couple months. But you can imagine we start creating more intricate experiences for our customers, our brands, our fans online, the new tools that we're going to have available to us, and how amazing that's going to be, and the different creative outlets that we can actually utilize on Facebook. Now it seems all really advanced, right? Like we're going to need to onboard a bunch of people, all this stuff. We're doing this without a single line of code, right? So we don't need a bunch of, and I love all the developers in the room, but the thing is building experiences for these platforms no longer requires a team of advanced engineers with specific degrees specifically in the Facebook development platform. Facebook has released a tool that basically allows anyone in this room, whether you're an account, a creative, a project manager, whatever, to jump in and actually build these experiences on Facebook. So what that means for us is that we're going to be able to have access to the tools to actually have those games come to life without a ton of barriers to entry. And I'm actually just going to skip over a video that talks about basically AR Studio, but what it allows us to do is create things like this on our desktop machines, which is really exciting, right? Because there's no longer that huge barrier to entry. And I'm going to skip over this video too, just to make sure that we have enough time. So we talked about VR and Facebook at that kind of weird demo video. We talked about AR, and not just fueling the selfie camera and the masks, but truly bringing gaming to life, bringing advanced experiences to life within whatever environment you might be in. And then also Messenger. So we look at Facebook, and they have Instagram, they have the Facebook, and then also, as many of you know, there's the Messenger platform that you use online. And I talk a lot about chat bots and things like that, and bots, just for a quick review, basically are machines that are responding to your chat automatically. So they are used for customer service, they're used for ordering food, they're used for whatever it might be, and I can basically chat to a computer and it's analyzing the stuff I'm texting and then responding back appropriately based on what I need, and that's considered a chat bot. What Facebook is doing is they're looking at building in these chat bots to group conversations. So myself and Lee and John and Zach are all, let's say, going to Basilica Block Party. we're chatting about when we're meeting, we're chatting about how we're getting there, we're chatting about all this kind of stuff. We can actually invite Facebook's personal assistant into the chat, and we can do everything from review restaurants, we can make a booking, we can order an Uber, all through Facebook Messenger, right? And we're never leaving that platform. Very similar to Google Assistant, but Facebook Messenger now is going to be able to facilitate our entire evening out without ever leaving that platform by integrating these third-party brands. There's continuously more experiences that are enabled by that new platform. And this is my last video, I promise. So that's just a quick demo of a quick kind of interaction that you know, a group of people can have on Messenger. Right? So that's Facebook F8. All right, I cruised through this, and I always want to make sure we have a couple minutes for questions. I think it's important to look at why does this matter. A lot of cool things, great, we can use these, but how are we actually going to put this to work in the work that we're doing day in and day out in the next few weeks? I think it's important to look at a few things when we look at F8 and we look at I/O, right? And I think there's a lot of similarities that we have to understand too. But I think the reach of users is something that we can't ignore, right? So when these new features come up, we have to realize that it's not just this like niche startup company over in Northeast Minneapolis building this, right? We're gonna instantly have, or millions and millions of consumers are gonna instantly have access to these new experiences, and people are gonna be building for them nearly right away because of the demand. There's minimal barriers to entry. I think we all probably have Facebook on our phone. We all have Messenger, we all have Instagram. We all use Google every day. And I think that basically the barrier to entry is minimal. You're not downloading a new app. You're not trying to onboard a new hardware device. For a lot of these features, they're going to become available to the platforms that we use and are familiar with each and every day. And so I think the barrier to entries that you typically see with new and emerging tech are almost zeroed out. There's new opportunities for frictionless brand experiences and transactions. The revolutions of retail book, the last PublicHouse, we always talk about this idea of how do you reduce the friction in a brand interaction? And that could be a transaction, that could be getting more information, whatever that might be. But the idea is we're already living on Facebook, we're already living on Google, and these experiences are able to enhance that, or these features are able to enhance that experience to increasingly limit the friction that our consumers are seeing. The Panera example, exactly. We're never leaving Google Assistant, and I did a whole Panera order right online. I paid for it with a credit card. Right? For Facebook F8, incredibly attainable advanced creative tools. We look at the AR Composer. We look at these things that we hope to be using right next to Creative Suite. When we look at, we can reach millions and millions of users in a really interactive and really immersive way, and we can use it sitting next to Creative Suite. It's a pretty powerful tool, right? And then for I/O, unique features that enhance daily search and online tasks. Like our search teams are already playing with the voice search capabilities. We're already playing with Google Home. We're already looking to say, how is Assistant going to affect the work we're doing on Google each and every day? And how can we be ahead of the curve to make sure that we're delivering the results on the platforms that our consumers and our brand's consumers want to see? All right, cruise through it. We have about 5 minutes for questions, which is perfect. What kind of questions do you guys have about this? And I'll do my best to answer. Hey, Mark. Totally, it's a great point, right? So I think if you've seen on Facebook, Facebook Stories is on the very top of your Facebook feed, and it's a big thing that they released to try to combat Snapchat. It's, for me at least, it's pretty dormant, right? Like people aren't necessarily adopting that. I think the things that we talked about here, Mark, aren't necessarily out to public launch, but are set to be in the next 6 months. So you look at Spaces, at VR World, that's for early adopter beta program access people. Wow, it's a lot of buzzwords in one. It's for beta, developers, right? So developers have it, consumers can get it if you own an HTC Vive. We don't necessarily know the adoption rate, but if you compare that to like a new random tech startup, Facebook's got a huge upper hand because they have instant access to those 2 billion active users each day. So the second they flip that switch, they're going to be able to get some sort of traction, and what takes off and what doesn't, we'll see. But it's pretty set to say it's going to have a pretty significant impact either way. The answer is yes. Like you do have to have a certain device. Do you have to have the newest and coolest iPhone 8s Plus X? No. Do you have to have a phone that's got some processing power and a camera on it? Yeah. So that does limit some of the lower end users, but I think the device limitations are pretty negligible, specifically for the markets here in the United States. I think that's a great question. I think we need to look at, as users and ourselves, like, do we just use Facebook or do we just use Google today? I don't think so. I think each one has its own point. As you can see, they're kind of going in parallel, right? Like, there's a lot of similarities with the releases they're having. So I think you're going to start to see an either or, but right now both platforms are pretty dominant equally. So, yeah, Allie. Totally. That's always like a social, like, interesting thing to think about, right? And I think it's a really deep question to say, well, are people just going to reject it because it's so in your face, it's so immersive? And you always run that risk. Like, you always have the risk of people pushing it away. I think with Facebook, though, as we've seen over the last 10 years of Facebook growth, like, there have been some hits and some misses, but we've never really seen a mass exodus from the platform, right? And I think Facebook is having the heavy hand to say, this is what Facebook is now, and people usually come running no matter what the social cry might be. But yeah, there is that risk, and we'll have to see. So, and I think for a brand example for us to think about, like, should we be on all these platforms? It might not be right for your brands. Like, this might not be something that, brand X is going to be right in, because it's not going to portray the things that that brand stands for correctly. And that's where I think, you have to be very careful. We're not just going to throw this at every single brand just because we think it's new and cool. But if it matches and it hits the consumers where we need to hit them, then it's appropriate. Yeah, Jim. The difference between the two of them, or Facebook and Google, or Apple and Google? Facebook and Google, or Apple and Google? So that's a loaded question. It's a good one, Jim. I think Liz has talked about this before, but you look at Apple and Google. Google is more open source, so it's an open garden, right? And Apple's more of a closed wall ecosystem. The reason Android has 2 billion users is because it's an open source operating system, and what that means is that any manufacturer can create a phone that runs Android, right? So the barrier to entry for a manufacturer in a different country, they can pump out a phone for $50 and throw Android on it, and that's why they're seeing 2 billion. Apple is much more locked down, right? So an iPhone is an iPhone is an iPhone because it's awesome, and it's because Apple doesn't allow anyone else to run iOS on their devices. Same with Mac OS. But you see the closed off garden versus the open garden, and it's a conversation that could last an hour, but that's, I think, the main difference between the two. Sweet. Thank you guys so much for coming. I think the big thing, if you want to download this or talk more, I'm going to hang out, but also everything that we do here is available for download on Edge. You can also download the Keynote version of it via Periscope Edge. So if you want an editable file of this whole thing, feel free to pull slides, use it as you wish, watch the videos over again. It's a pretty big file, but all the videos are embedded, so you can use them as you wish. And thanks again for coming to Public House.